Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hartford Whalers expansion franchise on NHL 24. Year 5 is officially in the books as we were outed in the first round by the New York Rangers in that devastating overtime defeat in Game 6. But it wasn't all bad as our Poughkeepsie Panthers at the AHL level did take home the Calder Cup for the first time in our franchise's history. So at least we are building there at the AHL level as we've now had a nice influx of youth with successful draft classes over the course of this franchise, headlined by goaltender Javon Marks, who had an outstanding run there during the postseason, going 13-4, and he's going to back up Yaroslav Askarov next season as a rookie, and also right winger Frederick Leonard from our 2024 draft class as he was named playoff MVP, averaging 1 point per game. That's all fine and dandy, but we're not trying to win Calder Cups, we're trying to win Stanley Cups. And that now brings us into our Year 5 offseason episode. It is now June 25th, 2028, and we're going to start here at our re-signings phase. And right off the bat, we do have a couple tough decisions to make, especially here starting with Mark Scheifele. He's been a mainstay for our top line over the course of this franchise, coming off a 76-point season. So even at 35 years old, he is still producing at a high level. We were able to bring him back on a one-year contract last offseason, so probably going to bring a similar approach, even at 88 overall now, entering his age 36 season. Regression is definitely going to start trickling in, and also Brandon Montour, 34 years old, but I think a blue-chip defenseman, definitely more in demand, and our team really lacks depth at the position because we have 3 or 4 of our defensemen on expiring contracts. But his second year as a Whaler, 61 points, he was tremendous after we traded a first, a second, and a top prospect for him a couple off seasons ago. But probably a similar situation with Scheifele, going to try and get him back on a 1 or maybe 2 year contract if necessary. And also our captain, Andrew Mangiapane, he's been the captain all 5 seasons of this expansion franchise, one of 4 survivors from that original expansion draft, and he's been super steady, 50 points every season so far, coming off his highest mark in Hartford with 59 points last season. 16 points on the power play, which was a high for him over the course of this franchise as well. Our power play saw a significant improvement last year compared to year 4, and of course we're going to try and bring him back. Definitely the heartbeat of this team. Also, Bryan Rust, we brought him in at the trade deadline, and he was phenomenal. 19 points in 19 games, and he carried that into that playoff series against the Rangers with 7 points in 6 games, but he's also a little bit older, up to 36 years old now, and I don't know if it's viable to bring him back. He's definitely going to see some regression, so maybe going to be looking at him as more of a 3rd or 4th liner, and I'm not sure if that's a role he would be willing to take. So at this point, we will go by position. Also, Ivan Provorov, one of our top defensemen, is on an expiring contract, as well as Brock Besser. We have no right wingers, so in addition to getting Mark Scheifele, Andrew Mangiapane, Brandon Montour back, definitely going to look to bring Brock Besser back as well, his 3rd year as a Whaler. He was our big addition from that year 2 offseason, coming off a 22-goal season, 60 points, and he's been a steady producer, mostly on our second line over the course of this franchise. Also, that sniper archetype, we need some goal scorers, and he's been one of our players to provide that. So we're going to jump in here to negotiations with Mark Scheifele, and off the bat, he only won 7.7 over 1 year, which is absolutely in the neighborhood of what I was thinking. We probably would even go up to 7.8 on that, which would bring us down to about $34 million in cap space. So we got to keep that number in mind and also add that to some other contracts we're going to dish out. So Andrew Mangiapane now at 32 years old, and he wants a 3-year contract, just over $6 million, which I think is very fair, definitely in the neighborhood of what we would offer him. And if I'm going a multi-year contract, I really don't like to push it past their age 35, 36 season, so this is right in that neighborhood, that sweet spot. So between Scheifele's contract and Mangiapane's offer, that would bring us to about $13 million out of 41 in available cap space. And then we also have to deal with Brock Besser as well. So I think initially we're going to let Bryan Rust and even Tom Wilson walk. Wilson had another productive season. His 4th with our Whalers was signed in that same offseason with Mark Scheifele, but his points total has dipped in each of the past couple seasons, and he is getting a little bit older. And we also have Gabriel Landeskog now, who can assume more of that power forward role on our 2nd and 3rd line. Plus, we kind of need to save the cap space going into free agency. I don't anticipate a loaded free agency pool, but there were a few guys I had my eye on, and that brings us to Brock Besser, who wants 3 years at $5.4 million. And again, I think all these contract demands from all these players so far are more than fair. And we'll say $5.5 million would bring our offered contract totals to $18 million. Also with Brandon Montour and Ivan Provorov left to deal with. So we'll now take a look at Montour, and he wants $8.225 million over 2 years, which I think is very fair and something I'd be willing to do, but that's just really going to eat up all our cap room. We're not going to have much to deal with, I don't think, when we go into free agency. And Ivan Provorov, someone we also want to look to get back on a 3 or 4 year contract. He wants 4 years at $5.6 million, which I also think is good value. So if we're able to re-sign all these players at pretty much what they're asking, I think we'll have about $7-8 million to work with in free agency to bring in maybe 1 or 2 forwards, probably bring in a defenseman, because we also have a few young guys who are going to be elevated into more prominent roles, especially going from juniors to the NHL, and that's what we're looking to do here with Francois Lefebvre, our first round pick from last year, and in one season back at juniors after being drafted, he posted 115 points with 71 assists, 44 goals, and just absolutely took his game to the next level. So I think he's more than ready to contribute at the NHL level. Worst case, he plays, those 7-9 games, and if he doesn't quite cut it, we could always relegate him back to his junior club. But seeing as how we are probably going to be in a tight cap situation, getting him on the roster at just about $1 million would definitely work out. Looking at his skills, the skating and the puck skills definitely jump out at you right away. Good senses, defense, and shooting already at just 19 years old. So still a teenager, and we think he's ready to contribute at the NHL level and hopefully going to be a maybe future all-star down the road. So without further ado, we are going to welcome Francois Lefebvre to the NHL club here, as he is going to get back to us about that offer, but more than anticipating him to sign that, which will now bring us up here to Mark Scheifele. We are going to offer him that 1-year contract at 7.8. We'll bump it up a little bit and hopefully just ensure that he comes back, as he's been a big piece of this team, this expansion franchise, the first that we've had on this channel, and we're going to churn out one more season at least before jumping into the next installment of NHL and getting a new expansion franchise going on the channel. So dipping now to our AHL squad, coming off a Calder Cup championship, Morgan Iverson is now ready to come over from juniors, a 4th round pick from 2026, a grinder, and he's a center, still only a 60 overall, so might be a healthy scratch most of the way depending on injuries. But 3 years, $900,000 there on an entry-level contract. And we're also going to bring back 6th round pick here, Tommaso DeLuca. He was from our first draft class, just bring him back on a 1-year contract here. And we're also going to re-sign Riley Damiani here on a 2-way contract, a stalwart for our Poughkeepsie team over the course of this expansion franchise, coming off a 67-point season, and he's actually been on the team all 5 years of this franchise. So I think we owe it to him to bring him back, especially, just considering he can maybe even jump up to the NHL level if injuries elevate him there. So we'll give him that 1-year contract offer. Also going to do the same here for Jaromir Pitlick, who has been very good for us, just 1 year, as we get more of an influx of younger guys drafted into the organization, now going to left wing. And we are going to negotiate here with Andrew Mangiapane, of course, the captain of our team, and he wants 3 years at just over $6 million. So we'll see, being the captain, if he's willing to take a slight pay cut. We'll go 3 years at $6 million for $18 million collectively, and hopefully we get these guys back on what we're offering initially. Denis Gurianov, probably going to let him walk. He filled on the 4th line for 1 season, and he was decent. Definitely had some flashes, but overall a little unstable. And that brings us to Blade Jenkins, another guy who's been pivotal for our Poughkeepsie Panthers. Again, just like Riley Damiani, someone who's played pretty much every game, although he has missed time over the last 2 seasons, but he had that overtime winner to clinch the Calder Cup, so I think that alone, he's going to go down in Poughkeepsie Panthers history, and we'll bring him back for at least 1 more season, and hopefully we can ride that into another Calder Cup championship. Zeb Forsfahal will bring him back on another 2-year deal here, part of our inaugural entry draft class from episode 2, and Luke Toporowski will release him now, 27 years old. We're looking to get a little bit younger here, as we have more guys to sign here coming over from juniors, including Jeffrey Slaney, coming off a 45-goal season, 64 assists, as he posted over 100 points there at Oshawa, and he showed major improvement off a 41-point season, more than doubling that, and actually probably even closer to tripling that total from 41. Had 52 points on the power play with 26 power play goals, 6'2", 211 pounds at 20 years old, low elite potential, and I remember him being a later draft pick. He was a 6th round pick in 2026, and I remember him being a gem, I believe, from that draft class in a playmaker archetype, and we'll sign him to his entry-level contract here at $975, not quite going to break $1 million, but we'll see if he signs that. Now going over to right wingers, off the rip here, we're going to release Ali Lykesell from our AHL team, now off a restricted free agent contract, older at 28 years old. It looks like we don't have any entry-level guys to sign at the position quite yet, but looking at Brock Besser now, as we try to bring him back. He wants 3 years at 5.4, which I do think is fair. We'll try and dip it a little bit and see if he takes a little bit of a pay cut, and we could always just bump it up next go-around. And Brian Russ, probably going to have to let him walk, unfortunately. Only 1 year at like 4.5, but we already knew he was going to be a rental for us. Tom Wilson, also someone we have to let walk, a little bit older as well. And we have some younger guys coming up, including Frederick Leonard. We mentioned him at the top of the episode, our top prospect in the organization. His first season at the AHL level, or I'm sorry, his second season, he excelled again, posting 60 points, 58 the year prior. The goal total dipped, but the assists went up, and he's a physical player at 6'2", 209, a playmaker, but we consider him a good two-way guy as well. Good offensive flow to his game. And Andrei Vorobiev led our team in goals with 31, his first taste of North American hockey coming over from Russia. He was our first-round pick from back in year 2, so between Francois Lefebvre, that center we signed, our first-round pick from last year, Vorobiev, and also Frederick Leonard, we're hoping 2 out of the 3, or maybe even all 3 of them, prove themselves worthy in the preseason and earn a spot on the NHL roster for opening night. So now coming over to defense, Brandon Montour, definitely want to bring him back on a 2-year contract, and he wants 8.225. Maybe we can bring that down to 8.1, but probably going to have to bring it up a little bit more, I would assume. But we're hoping that some of these guys take slight pay cuts in the betterment of the team. Now, Ivan Provorov wants 4 years. I feel more comfortable going down to 3, and we'll even go down to like 4.45 and see if he bites on that. I really like Andrew Peeke. He was a very good value signing a couple off seasons back. Had a plus 36 last year playing with line mate Ivan Provorov, 22 the year before for a collective plus 58 over his 2-year span here with the Hartford Whalers, but he wants a little bit more than we were paying him prior, and it says here he's not even interested in an extension either. So Andrew Peeke going to be a free agent, hopefully someone we can replace in that same stage. We're just going to go ahead and release Robbie Addard. He served as our 7th defenseman, but never even needed him over the course of the season. Now another young guy here, former first-round pick Benjamin Culp, that was from the year 3 offseason, a 2-way defenseman here with a right-handed shot. We're hoping he can also have a strong preseason and maybe prove himself worthy of being on that 3rd defensive pairing on opening night. 77 points last year, the most he posted at the junior level, with 64 assists, 13 goals, all career highs there for him, along with 21 points on the power play. So we are going to go ahead and sign him to an entry-level contract, and like I said, hopefully he can work his way up to the NHL squad, but worst case, he serves a year there in Poughkeepsie. Heimel Salmi here was a standout there at the AHL level, still a restricted free agent. We will go ahead and re-sign him. Maybe even someone who can contribute at the NHL level. Definitely going to get some work there in the preseason. Although Xavier Bouchard here now, an unrestricted free agent, has played a lot of time there in Poughkeepsie, but getting younger there, we are going to go ahead and release him. Jeremy Hansel, part of our inaugural entry-level class, will bring him back for one more season and see how he does. That brings us now to AJ Oldovich coming over as he's set to sign his entry-level contract. 43 points last year, an offensive defenseman, maybe a potential puck mover there, a quarterback of our power play at some point, low elite potential. 72 overall, was the 46th overall pick from 2026, so he's going to get his first taste there in the AHL, and hopefully not before too long he works his way up to the Hartford Whalers level. And I think we had one more guy here to sign, and that's Brendan Sim, part of that same draft class as Oldovich. Sim, though, a defensive defenseman, so a different play style there. Also a right-handed shot, whereas Oldovich is a left-handed shot. So I think that makes it now 4 or 5 players we're signing to their entry-level contracts, as we're influxing even more youth there to our AHL level, which is exactly what we wanted to see. So that's pretty much all we're going to try and do here. I'm sure some of those players are going to decline, and we're going to have to go in and offer them a little bit more money, but we will see how it goes. We are also able to re-sign our associate head coach there. Mauricio Flood does come back there, has very good chemistry with our team, and Mark Scheifele does reject that offer despite us upping it a little bit to 8.8, or I believe it was actually 7.8. We are going to have to go back and offer him more. Maybe we'll just make it an even $8 million. Andrew Mangiapane does take that 3-year contract at $6 million, as he'll remain to be the serving captain of this team, now going on year 6. Ivan Provorov does not accept that initial contract offer. We dipped the years and the salary, so we're probably going to have to go more towards the base of what he was asking for. We do re-sign Brandon Montour, so that's a slight relief there. I thought he was going to be a little bit more difficult, but even at 34 years old, he's still among the best defensemen in the game, but we're definitely going to have to try and get him replaced over the next year or two. We also do bring back Brock Besser, so it seems Mark Scheifele really the only main piece so far to decline the initial offer. Blade Jenkins comes back there for Poughkeepsie. Riley Damiani the same. Morgan Iverson at 60 overall, grinder center. He signs Jeffrey Slaney, the playmaker, who went from 40 points to over 100. There at Oshawa. Francois Lefebvre signs, and I think of all the young guys we highlighted, he has the best chance of making the opening night roster and maybe even winning the Calder Trophy as a rookie this upcoming season. Jeremy Hansel also re-signs there for Poughkeepsie. Zeb Forsvahal, Alexei Heimelsalmi, Yarmir Pitlick, Tommaso DeLuca, Benjamin Culp, that first-round pick from year 3, two-way defenseman, right-handed shot, someone who's going to try and earn a spot in the preseason. Brandon Sim, they're going to be an AHL guy along with AJ Oldrovich, two low-elite potential defensemen who will get their first taste of AHL action next year. So it now just comes down to re-signing Ivan Provorov and also Mark Scheifele. We're probably going to give Mark Scheifele $7.98 million here for this last year that he's likely to spend in Hartford, but we had it at 7.8, still not enough, so we'll go up to 7.9 and see if that gets it done for him. And also now going over to Ivan Provorov, he wanted 4 years, but we want to give him 3, and we'll give him more of what he was asking salary-wise, and we'll even just keep it there at 5.6. So if these two players do re-sign, we'll have actually about like $8 or $9 million to utilize in signing the final 2 or 3 players that are going to make up this roster. Now going over to goaltending, which we did forego initially, seeing as how Javon Marks is going to be elevated to the NHL squad, backing up Yaroslav Askarov during his rookie campaign. We will take a look at the numbers last year at Poughkeepsie. Was 44-20-4 with 5 shutouts, a 916 save percentage, 2.24 goals against, just phenomenal numbers there, and he kept it up in the postseason, a 201 goals against, 932 save percentage, 1 shutout, and he was 14-4-1 en route to capturing the Calder Cup. And at 6'1", definitely on the smaller side stature-wise. I mentioned he reminds you of someone like Dominik Hasek from back in the day, and the athletic traits are very good: 91 agility, 91 speed, 85 vision, 86 endurance, and most of those reflexes are pretty good, although a few there in the low 80s, which I think serving it as a backup role to Yaroslav Askarov is the right way to go as a rookie, as he's groomed into a potential starter, hopefully a franchise goaltender of the future, because there are only 2 seasons left on Askarov's contract, so maybe at that point Marks is ready to take over and carry the torch. But we do have to settle our AHL goaltending situation, because it's not going to be Marks anymore. Instead, it's going to be Frederick Dichow, which he has spent a few years down there at Poughkeepsie, and in a limited sample size, more so our goaltender 3 down there. He has put up good numbers, compiling a 16-4-1 record, and he's likely going to be the starter next year, although we are going to have to sign a goaltender to play at the AHL next year to back him up, as we are going to have Gustav Kovalev coming over next season from Russia. He was a 4th-round pick last year, and we also have Doug Hall from that same draft class, a 3rd-round pick. We'll have both of them coming over, so we need 1 or 2 guys to fill in for the next year until we get Kovalev and Hall coming over from their junior clubs. But that does bring an end to the tenure here of Daniil Tarasov, one of 4 remaining survivors from that initial expansion draft, going to be dwindled down to 3 now with Andrew Mangiapane, Philip Zadina, and Jacob Perreault. But Tarasov has been solid over the past couple seasons, filling in as our backup. Even this past season, he had to fill in as a starter a lot of the way because Askarov did miss a handful of games, and he was very solid in that span, was one of the leaders in the locker room, which losing him will bring a hit to our team chemistry, but we need to bring Javon Marks up and get him acclimated to the NHL game, and that's just part of the business, part of building a team, as some of these younger guys are starting to come up through the pipeline and supplant some of these roles that have stood on our team as a young expansion team. So we gave Provorov that contract, we gave Mark Scheifele that contract, and hopefully that puts an end to this re-signings phase for us pretty early, with a few days left to spare before free agency, and Mark Scheifele still has not re-signed, but we do get Ivan Provorov back, so for Mark Scheifele, I think we are going to have to just go to $8 million flat, and maybe even more than that, because I even remember last offseason, he was difficult. We had to go over what he was asking, not by too much, but now we will try again here, going to $8 million, which I think will bring us down to like $9 million in cap space to work with in free agency. And next year, I think we're going to be in a spot financially where we can make a splash, because we're going to get Gabriel Landeskog's contract off the books, Ryan Graves' contract off the books, which will free up close to $13 million in cap space, which will allow us to maybe sign a superstar if one does hit the market. So even at $8 million, Mark Scheifele still is going to decline that offer. We have 3 more days left to re-sign him, and he's just making it interesting now at this point. I guess we'll go all the way up to 8.1, which is now close to $500,000 more than what he was asking for. So hopefully this gets it done, Mr. Scheifele. And that will get it done. He says it was an easy decision to renew that contract. I don't think it was so easy, though. Maybe it was easy sitting back and just raking in more money, but we're happy to pay him. He has been a pillar of this franchise, and he was the first, big-name free agent to buy in and come over via free agency. So that pretty much sums up what we're going to do here in re-signings. Brian Rust is going to hit the open market, unfortunately. It was a delight having him, even though it was only for about 30 games or so. Tom Wilson came over in that same free agent class, along with Mark Scheifele, as they were 2 big components on this team for most of the duration. Andrew Peak, Denis Guryanov are going to hit free agency. So we need to add another right-handed forward. Hopefully we can get a two-way forward at that. We only have, I think, 3 or 4 right now on the current roster. And we would also like to get a defenseman as well. I don't even have a preference on the play style, just as long as they can make an impact. But we're going to be looking towards some high upside, low risk type signings, unless someone that presents a perfect fit at the right price. We'll see how it goes, but I'm very excited for this year's free agency, even though I don't think there's going to be a huge opportunity for us to make a splash, not only because of our cap situation, but also because I don't anticipate the market being that strong. But that's not to say that we're going to have a couple guys that we're going to make a run at. And I guess we will just tender Jacob Perreault here, one of 3 surviving members from that expansion draft going back to episode 1. And a big reason why we're willing to just match that is not only his longevity here with the franchise, but also his willingness to take a two-way contract. So that will do it here for re-signings. We are just going to go ahead and fast forward to free agency here, July 1st of 2028. Let's dive into this free agency pool and see what we're working with. All right, at the top, it is Claude Giroux, the reigning Art Ross Trophy winner. I mean, he pretty much won every award this past season. At 40 years old, he posted 108 points, a new career high, his first 50-goal season of his career, aging like a fine wine as he made up the top line in the league along with Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. He is the top free agent this year, and it gets pretty weak after him. Pavel Zacha was someone we were eyeing up. Now at 31 years old, an elite potential center, left-handed power forward coming off a 56-point season with Boston. He has spent the last 6 seasons with the Bruins, and like I said, someone we liked, but he's demanding like $7.5 million. Already has 2 teams interested. We'll see who those 2 teams are. It is Boston and the Seattle Kraken, as Seattle is looking to rise from the doormat there in the Western Conference. We have Jonas Brodin, Timothy Liljegren, 2 defensemen right here, probably out of our reach. And like I said, I really do like Pavel Zacha, but that would eat up at least like 2/3 of the cap that we have to work with right now. Patrick Kane, former Hartford Whaler, great. He's still kicking here at age 39 now, spent 2 years in Boston and then 1 year with the Vegas Knights following 2 seasons with our Whalers, where he posted 148 points in those 2 seasons. We have Zellweger here, a restricted free agent of the New Jersey Devils. Probably not going to give him an offer sheet. A few more defensemen down here, including Victor Hedman. I think he was in Carolina the last couple years after a stop in Calgary. Became a free agent back in that year 2 offseason. We also have Joel Farabee, someone I've also really liked over the course of this franchise. Like Pavel Zacha, he also has that elite potential, but a two-way forward winger. A lifetime flyer to this point, coming off a 46-point season, a career high 63 the year prior. And I really do like Joel Farabee, but we did just re-sign Andrew Mangiapane, who pretty much fills that same role. If Farabee was a right-handed shot, I definitely would consider this more, or even if we had more cap space to work with, but we'll definitely keep him in mind along with Pavel Zacha. Farabee does want 6 years, though, more of a long-term commitment. We're not really looking to give out a multi-year contract of that magnitude unless it was like a superstar free agent, but obviously this free agency pool really lacks any elite talent at this point. Michael Bunting, a 50-point season last year, but again, another two-way forward at left wing, much like what we already have in Andrew Mangiapane. I really wish that Farabee was a right-handed shot. That really would make it a no-brainer. Rasmus Sandin, 80 overall, but he wants 5 years at $5.35 million, so we're not going to be the team to overpay for him at that low overall, as he has spent all 5 seasons with the Washington Capitals over this franchise. I do like Dante Fabro, though, at 30 years old. 22 points last year between Nashville and Carolina, was traded to the Hurricanes at the trade deadline. A lifelong Nashville Predator before that. Very steady production over his career. Hit a 13-goal season back in year 2, although his goal totals have dipped every season since then, and he's asking for 5.3, which maybe is a little bit higher than we're willing to pay, especially on 4 years. And the Nashville Predators are already interested, trying to get him back. Ethan Bear here, another right-handed shot on defense. Very solid player at 83 overall, asking pretty much the same as Fabro, but a year less. I've always really liked Martin Fajarvi, but he is a defensive defenseman there on the left side. We already have 2 of those, so we don't need to overdo it with that defensive archetype. Probably want to get a two-way defender here, but more of a right-handed shot. Alex Turcotte, I've always liked him as well, but he wants a 6-year contract, 84 overall, so it looks like he's starting to find his footing. He was traded to the Devils at the trade deadline last year, and despite that, he was relegated to the AHL, where he posted 17 points in 19 games. So he ended the year at the AHL level, and he wants about $5 million per year on a 6-year contract. And now Brian Rust. And the more I go down this list, the more I think it's realistic to get Brian Rust back. Age really is the biggest holdup with him. Definitely going to see some regression, you would think, over the course of next season. But he really just lit it up from the time we acquired him at the trade deadline. 19 points in 19 games. He even had a hat trick against the Minnesota Wild towards the end of the season. Then 7 points in the 6 playoff game series against the Rangers, where he posted an astronomical +7. So even though Rust is a little bit older, he just proved to be the perfect fit to our team, and he really fits there on the second or third line, even the fourth line at this stage of his career. And as I've been saying, we really need a right-handed shot, especially like a two-way forward type of guy. So I think Rust might be someone we look to bring back, just because it looks like a really weak free agency class, especially as we go down further. We have Trevor Moore here, a playmaker. We already have a ton of those, like 3 or 4 playmakers already on the roster. I do like Ross Colton, veteran who posted 53 points last season. Very productive, and he's actually been over 40 points every year of this franchise, coming off a Stanley Cup now with the Colorado Avalanche. Let's see what his face-off percentage is. We definitely need better face-off men, and he was under 50%, so not the best there, albeit a very productive season and a Stanley Cup ring to show for it as well. Niels Höglander, someone I've always liked as well, but really didn't find his potential there playing for the Canucks. It's been a very bad Vancouver team over the course of this franchise. Was traded to the Senators at the trade deadline, but didn't really show much down the stretch there, as they even missed the playoffs entirely. So I was going to say we'll go by position, but also Andrew Peeke here, he's someone we could maybe bring back. Posted a +36 last year in the plus-minus category, most notably playing with Ivan Provorov there on the second defensive pairing. So far, I think it really comes down to Andrew Peeke or Dante Fabro, who we're going to pursue as a defenseman, and Peeke wants about $1 million less per year, so he's probably the more practical choice, especially already having some comfortability with the team. We have Thomas Novak here, elite potential, and he only wants just over $4 million per year at 86 overall, so he looks like to be a big bargain right now at this point. He's had super steady production over his career with the Nashville Predators. They have not been that great over the course of this franchise, but I think bringing him into a team like Hartford, that could see him take his game to the next level. Someone who can contribute shorthanded on the power play as well, and it looks like he's a second, third line type guy based on our scout assessment, which is exactly what we're looking for face-off wise. I did want to look at his face-off rating, and he's at 75, so not great there, but just a super well-rounded game, and I think he still has a little bit of a ceiling that he can hit, and really just at that price of just over $4 million, I think he might pose the best value so far in this entire free agent class. He does have 2 bidders right now, being the Ottawa Senators and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So we'll see if we can maybe outbid them. Jacob Middleton here wants a 3-year deal over $4 million at just 74 overall. That would be highway robbery. Tom Wilson here, we might bring him back. We'll see how it goes. A quiet 50-point season last year. And if not Brian Rust, I think he might be another option at right wing, because we definitely need a right winger. And at this point, we'll go by position now, starting at center. We already saw Claude Giroux, Pavel Zacha, and like I expressed, we definitely do have interest in Zacha, but just not the cap room to work it in. We do like Turcotte, Ross Colton, Thomas Novak, and like I said, I really think he would be a tremendous value and someone who can contribute even on the wing, if not at center on the second or third line. A two-way guy, which we would like to bring into the team. Under him, we have Tyson Jost, Andrew Kopp, who we actually signed last year in free agency before trading him to Pittsburgh in that Brian Rust trade. And it looks like it actually paid off well for him. 16 points in 19 games there with the Penguins, although they do not re-sign him. A few more guys here. Sidney Crosby, he spent a couple years with Calgary. 99 points over 2 seasons with them, still 40 years old, and still looking to keep his career going. What are his totals right now? 1,848 points, 680 goals, and over 1,100 career assists. As he continues to climb the all-time leaderboards, we'll see where he ends up, as he's likely to sport his 3rd different sweater now in the NHL, along with Pittsburgh, of course, and then Calgary. And now going over to left wing. Actually, Shane Pinto is someone I also really like, a very cheap option at 6'3", 201, 81 overall at 27 years old. The production really hasn't been there in Ottawa. In fact, he topped out at 35 points all these years ago. I think that even preceded the start of this franchise, 35 points back in 2022, 2023. And he's mainly just been there on the 3rd and 4th line there with the Senators, but he only wants just over $2 million. And he does bring that right-handed shot, so not someone we would initially go after, but maybe a backup plan if we miss out on someone like Brian Rust or even Thomas Novak here at left wing. Joel Farabee probably a little bit out of our reach. As we said, we're not really looking to give him a 6-year contract, although we do think he has some good upside left, and he is one of the best two-way wingers in the game at this point. Michael Bunting, kind of the same story. Brad Marchand, now at 40 years old, not quite what we're looking for. I do like Robbie Fabry here, a 17-goal season. We could use a sniper there for our bottom lines, and he played that role very well for the Florida Panthers, who made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Fabry wants $3.3 million on a 3-year contract, and again, someone at 32 years old who's going to be a bottom 6 winger for us. We're not really looking to shell out a 3-year contract. We're more so looking for a 1-year deal, maybe a 2-year deal, depending on the player. I do like Teravainen down here as well, a skill guy that could go on our bottom line now at 33 years old, a 40-point season as he spent the last 4 years with the St. Louis Blues. And his production has been very sporadic, but as I said, I do like his skill, especially at this stage of his career. Not really asking for much at under $3 million, but probably not someone we're going to initially go after. Michael Rasmussen here, we traded him in that Gabriel Landeskog deal. He went on to win a Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche, but they did not re-sign him. We have Grigory Denisenko, we sent him to Pittsburgh, or I'm sorry, make that Montreal in that Ryan Graves trade, the trade deadline. He had 11 points in 19 games, better production than what he was sporting with us. And then also down here is Denis Gurianov, 30 points in one season as a Hartford Whaler. Thought about maybe bringing him back because, as I said when talking about Fabry, we definitely could use a sniper there on that bottom line, but we're not going to approach those guys at this stage of free agency. So it drops off big time after that, as I've been stressing, a really weak free agent class here. So I don't think there's many opportunities to, bring our team to another level, but we could at least keep pace at where we were at, because despite a first round exit, we were a very good team. I think third in the NHL altogether, finishing second in the Eastern Conference. And Brian Rust, I think the more I think about it, the more it makes sense to bring him back, but no offers right now. So I think we will hold off for a few days and see if his expected salary drops a little bit and we can maybe snatch him up on a better value. I think Tom Wilson, a good backup plan. As I stressed, we definitely need a right winger, so it really comes down to just bringing back either Tom Wilson or Brian Rust. And I do like Brian Rust's skill set a little bit more, even though he is demanding about $1 million more than Tom Wilson, but both expecting a 1-year contract at this stage of their career. Mark Stone would be interesting, a 52-point season last year with the Capitals, his first season away from Vegas. Although at 36 years old, all the injury concerns, I don't think it would be worth it to pursue him, even though we really do need a right winger. And then kind of a big drop off after that, which will bring us to defense. And I think it really does just come down to Dante Fabro. Do we want to pay him a little bit more than Andrew Peeke? And also with that, it would be on a contract like double the length, as Fabro wants 4 years compared to Andrew Peeke, who wants 3 years. But we might be able to talk him down to 2 years. And the reason why I'm not trying to get caught up in these long-term contracts, because we have a lot of young prospects now coming up through the pipeline. So there's no need to really sign any long-term contracts and debt ourselves in future years when we can maybe make a bigger splash in free agency when someone worthwhile presents themselves. Because obviously this year, really no keynote free agent to get into a bidding war over. And we'll just take a look at goaltending, even though we're not into the market for goaltending. But Dustin Wolf is the top guy on the market, it seems. He's never been the starter in Calgary. Igor Shesterkin signed with the Flames 3 years back. And since then, Wolf has just been the backup to him. But now we'll get a chance to be the starting guy, currently with one offer. And that's coming from the San Jose Sharks. So we pretty much went over this free agency class, as I've been stressing, just not the strongest group of players. There are a few pieces I think that we could bring in to restabilize our team. Even I think Thomas Novak is probably going to be the guy that we go after. I just think that's such a good value as we keep going down the board here looking for him at just over $4 million on a 2-year contract. Again, despite that elite potential, despite being 86 overall, he only wants a 2-year deal at a very affordable amount at that. He's been super steady, as we said, production-wise over the course of his career with Nashville. And now I think it's time to take his talents to a new team. And I think he'll fill a very nice role on this team, whether he's playing like third-line center, maybe playing up on the wing a little bit, but we'll find a spot for him. So he does have 2 offers right now, one from Ottawa, one from Pittsburgh. So I don't even mind bumping up that salary a little bit. We'll even go all the way up to 4.425, or we'll actually just make it 4.45, as that's just under $400K of what he's asking for. Even I think we should actually just go 4.5 flat, and we'll give him that even offer. So we have a contract offer there for Thomas Novak. I think we're then going to look for Brian Rust and see if we can get him a little bit cheaper than 4.8. We'll sim ahead a couple days and see if any teams start getting in on his bidding war, or if that salary expected just drops entirely. And we're also going to wait it out a little bit here for Andrew Peeke. He was just very steady for us, and I don't mind bringing him back to rotate between our second and third defensive pairing. As we said, he made a tremendous pairing there with Ivan Provorov the past couple seasons, so we might as well just keep that intact. And I think we could get Peeke probably on a 2-year deal at maybe around $4 million, as opposed to like a 4-year deal for Dante Fabro, closer to like $6 million. So at this point, we do have that offer in for Thomas Novak. We're going to sim ahead a day or two and see if he gets back to us. And we're also going to take a look at Bryan Rust and Andrew Peeke, monitor their activity. And we also get an interesting trade offer here. Dylan Guenther, a high ceiling sniper there at left wing for the Arizona Coyotes. And they're asking for a 2 and Ryan Graves. And they would also throw in a 3rd round pick. I mean, that is very tempting, but we're not really at the stage to make a deal like that. We'll maybe revisit that a little bit later here in free agency. And a few days in, we still have not heard back from Thomas Novak. And we will jump back into it and see if Bryan Rust has got an offer so far. He does not. We also have Rickard Rakell here with 2 offers going over to left wing. Joel Farabee with 2 offers. Michael Bunting with 3 offers. At center, Pavel Zacha with a couple. Alex Turcotte with 3. Ross Colton with 7. And Thomas Novak now has 6 offers. And I wish it showed us the other teams that are in on the bidding war. But at this menu, since we have already offered him, we cannot view that. So no one is yet in on Bryan Rust or Tom Wilson. Going over to defense, it looks like none of these top guys yet have signed. Jonas Brodin, Liljegren, Zellweger still has that 1-year deal on the table for from the New Jersey Devils, unless someone maybe offers him a bigger offer sheet. Fabro has 2 offers on the table right now. And we'll go down to Andrew Peeke, still with nothing. And now we'll just go back and sim a couple more days. Novak should get back to us here in the next day or two, I would assume, as he does end up signing with our Hartford Whalers. So, like I said, I think Novak was a tremendous addition here. Just a low-risk, high-reward type signing. Very affordable at $4.5 million per year at just 2 years. And that's the type of deal we were exactly looking for. And now we'll see how much cap space we have left to work with. That leaves us with 7.8 pretty much. And now really our 2 main targets are Bryan Rust and Andrew Peeke, I think. Claude Giroux still with no offers. He's asking for over $9 million. Also wants a multi-year deal there, which would bring him to age 42. Sidney Crosby still with nothing on the table. And Shane Pinto down here, someone we're going to keep our eye on as we get a little bit deeper into free agency. Tara Vinen and Robbie Fabry still here at left wing. And back to right wing now. Bryan Rust still without an offer. Tom Wilson does have 1 offer now at this point, and that comes from the Calgary Flames. He was our backup plan if Bryan Rust didn't come back, but he's still offering, or I'm still wanting 4.8, and I thought that demand would drop a little bit at this point, but he is a little bit older, so that might go a little bit deeper than expected. But already we see here Andrew Peeke, his demand has dropped now to $3.25 million, as now most of the top defensemen have signed. So now at this point we'll give Andrew Peeke, I think, a 2-year offer, and seeing how he's not really getting any action at this point, we will just go ahead and drop the salary a little bit, ever so slightly, to 3.2 there, which I think is close to like $1 million less than what he was originally asking for. And Bryan Rust, still no action on him, so we'll stand by on him and again sim a couple days. But before that, we actually will take a look at the recap here and see where some of these top free agents have ended up. And I wish there was a better graphic at this point. I think NHL 25, 26, it'll get a little bit better, but we're still here working on NHL 24. But Jonas Brodin does sign with the Florida Panthers. The Seattle Kraken win the bidding war there for Joel Farabee. The Tampa Bay Lightning signed Michael Bunting to a 4-year contract. The Kraken also signed Pavel Zacha, so they signed Zacha and Joel Farabee, a big boost to that team as they're looking to contend in what has been a very weak Western Conference. The Panthers also get Rickard Rakell in addition to Jonas Brodin. The Hartford Whalers signed Thomas Novak, of course, Andrew Kopp also to Seattle, as they have signed 3 of the top forwards in this year's free agency. Dante Fabro signs back with the Predators. Rasmus Sandin to the Anaheim Ducks. Martin Vaharvey to the St. Louis Blues. The Nashville Predators signed Alex Turcotte to a 6-year deal, replacing Thomas Novak as a left-handed 2-way center. Timothy Liljegren also to the Ducks, so they signed him and Rasmus Sandin to bolster that defensive unit. Ross Colton to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And at this point, I think we can back out. I think those were most of the big names. Really just waiting on like Sidney Crosby, Claude Giroux, and maybe Dustin Wolf, as we want to see where the top goaltender ends up. And it's a shame they also don't have like a free agent tracker or anything at this menu. And a weird development here, Dustin Wolf's demand actually has dropped substantially from his original asking price. The Sharks were in on him, but have since, it looks like, rescinded their offer. And now Lucas Dostal is the top goaltender on the market. It looks like he was a starting goaltender last year with the Detroit Red Wings. Not the best numbers though, a sub 900 save percentage and the goals against over 3.2. And luckily we have our goaltending situation solidified because it's looking very barren at this point. But we did put our contract offer in there with Andrew Peeke, really just waiting now on Bryan Rust to hopefully drop his demand a little bit. And we'll see if Peeke even signs back with us. I mean, we did drop the number a little bit, but some team could definitely swoop in and steal him from us. Berkeley Catton and a 3rd round pick offered from Calgary for Brandon Montour, but we cannot part ways with Montour. Again, Ryan Graves gets a trade offer there, a 2nd and a 3rd there from Edmonton. We'll sim one more day and then jump back in and see if Bryan Rust has yet to get any action, and I'm glad we jumped in because he now has 2 offers and his demand has dropped just a little bit, so we might have misplayed this situation. He now has a couple offers, one from Arizona, one from Tampa Bay, and you got to think he's heavily considering that Lightning offer, and we'll even go above what he was originally asking. We'll go 4.85, and we'll see if that brings back Bryan Rust. And after that, I mean, those are pretty much the main moves we're looking at. As we stressed, not many opportunities to make a splash in this year's free agency, and we even miss out on Andrew Peeke as he signs with the Minnesota Wild. So we misplayed one opportunity so far, and we'll see if Bryan Rust comes back, and he does not. He signs with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that obviously forces us into a spot now where we have to call an audible. Claude Giroux is still the top free agent on the market, but again, asking for over $9 million per year, and he does want a multi-year contract. Not really something we can swing right now, and I don't know how well of a fit he is on our current team. Roman Josi, the top defenseman now on the board, aside from Zellweger, the restricted free agent. But Josi now 38 years old, I think a little bit out of our age range. His production did dip quite a bit this past season, and after missing out on Peeke and, of course, Fabro, who we didn't even pursue, we're going to be forced, I think, into an aftermarket defenseman, but maybe we can find a nice bargain. But we still want to add at least 1 or 2 more forwards. We have Jeff Skinner here, of course, a prolific goal scorer over the course of his career, even 30 goals last year with the Buffalo Sabres, as he now has over 500 in his career, over 1,000 career points as well, as he makes a case for maybe a potential Hall of Famer with that production. Robbie Fabry, who mentioned someone we might be interested in as a potential fill-in on the 4th line. Mark Stone now the top right wing available, and I did mention we really need a right winger, and he is 36 years old, played on a very bad Capitals team last year where he did post over 50 points, and the more I think about it, the more I think I would welcome a 1-year stint here from Mark Stone joining the Whalers. We don't have him fully scouted, but it looked like an 83 overall or so, and at this stage of his career, I think he would be a perfect fit on our 3rd, probably even our 4th line, and he already does have some superstar abilities. So the more I think about it, the more I think we're going to have to make a run at Mark Stone by default, but I do like what he presents and what he brings to the table. Now, we also have Teuvo Teravainen here, and I mentioned before, I really like his skill set. He kind of burned out with the Blues over the course of that contract, but still a respectable 40 points this past season, and I think that skill would be very good, very valuable on our 4th line. I saw he does have an offer right now. We'll check that out. His demand now is under $3 million per year, as he currently has an offer from the New York Islanders, who did win the President's Trophy last season, and Teravainen at 83 overall. I think that would be a really good fit, but the 3 years is kind of what's throwing me off right now. JT Compher, former expansion pick from Colorado. He had 41 points last season with the Seattle Kraken. Grigory Denisenko, we traded him to Montreal at the deadline. Probably not looking to bring him back. We have Alex Formenton here, Logan O'Connor. Really, it has thinned out quite a bit here in this free agency pool. It was kind of already thin to begin with, but now the options are definitely scarce. Mason Marchment, a power forward at left wing. We already have that in Gabriel Landeskog. Bernard Docker, maybe a reserve defenseman here we can look at. He does bring that right-handed shot, 28 years old, and I believe he was most recently with Tampa Bay, as he did spend the last 5 seasons with the Lightning, and he was very steady over that tenure and was a plus player every single season as well. So definitely Bernard Docker, I think someone we're going to look at. Just $2 million a year he's looking for. But then again, he's really not much different than what we have in Benjamin Culp, a first-round pick from a couple seasons ago, right-handed two-way defenseman, and I think he's currently at 76, 77 overall. So I think we would honestly just elect to give him playing time over signing someone like Bernard Docker, Denis Gurianov, a 4th-line sniper we can bring back. He was a little bit up and down, but seemed to put it together towards the end of the season, and definitely wants a cheap contract at that. And as we go down, really not much else here to note. I think even Shane Pinto has signed. Sidney Crosby has signed as well. I saw that Crosby has signed with the Boston Bruins. So Crosby actually will play with a original 6 team before he hangs up the skates. But we're going to target Mark Stone now. If we miss out on him, I really don't know what other options we would have. Maybe just bring in JT Compher back on a 1-year contract maybe. But if we're unable to sign Mark Stone here, that might force us into a position where we're forced to play someone like Andrei Vorobiev, a young guy there, former first-round pick, or even Frederick Leonard, our top prospect in the organization right now. So the Islanders are also in on Mark Stone, as are the Calgary Flames. At this stage, Stone just wants $3.175 million on a 1-year contract at age 36. So seeing as how he's 36 years old, we'll bump it all the way up to 3.6 because at this point we do have some cap space to play with. None of these guys are really demanding top dollar. So a 1-year contract offer here at $3.6 million for Mark Stone. I didn't expect to be in this situation where we're trying to bring in Mark Stone, but here we are. Now, Going back to forwards for a second, Jeff Skinner would be interesting, but I'm not really trying to sign two 36-year-olds in the same free agent cycle. So Teravainen, like I said, I really like that skill set he brings. I think he would be a very good piece on the third and fourth line, especially playing with some of those younger guys like Andre Vorobiev, Francois Lefebvre, who's probably going to open up on the roster at 19 years old. So Teravainen, though, the biggest holdup here, he wants 3 years. We're really only willing to give him 2. So what if we go down to 2 years and we'll even bump up the salary all the way to like 3.3, and we'll give him that offer. So 2 years, 3.3 million, and we gave Mark Stone that 1 year at 3.6 million. So now I think the last order of business really is to sign a defenseman. As I said, probably gonna have to settle for someone, lower caliber than what we were expecting, and maybe Dante Fabro or Andrew Peeke to open free agency. But I think this just means we're gonna have to rely on our younger guys. Benjamin Culp might be thrusted into a full-time role there on our third pairing because it's really bare here. There was somebody a little bit lower who I was eyeing up, and here he is, Tobias Bjornfot, a quiet 24-point season with the Los Angeles Kings, who actually ended up winning a playoff series. He spent the entirety of the year before there in the AHL with Ontario, where he actually shined with 34 points, 10 goals for the former first-round pick. It looked like he put it together there at the AHL, and then he applied that to the NHL, coming off a very good season, a very respectable production season from a third-pairing defenseman. So it really comes down to Bjornfot or even Bernard Docker here. But as I said, Bernard Docker being that right-handed shot, the two-way defenseman, I don't think he's much of an upgrade over Benjamin Culp. So we'd rather ride with Culp, I think, and instead we'll send an offer here to Tobias Bjornfot. Played in almost all 82 games last season, and even though we're in the market more for a right-handed shot, we're going to more so bet on Benjamin Culp to be ready for the NHL level a little bit sooner than later. So Bjornfot does want 2 years, which I don't mind just because his demand is so low. We'll even drop it off a little bit at 1.5. So these are probably the last 3 offers we're going to put in here for free agency. We missed out on Brian Rust. We missed out on Andrew Peeke. But I think Teravainen and Mark Stone to bring a little bit more flavor to our team, as Teravainen does sign right away. It didn't take any time. We seemed to head 1 day, and we're able to sign Teuvo Teravainen. As I've been emphasizing, I really like that skill he brings to the bottom lines. And he even has the capability to jump up to the first line, second line if needed. We also get Mark Stone on that 1 year contract, and we also get Tobias Bjornfot. So missing out on Rust and Peeke might have been a blessing in disguise because it allowed us a little more cap space to invest a little bit more at the forward spots where we're able to get Mark Stone and Teravainen, while also signing someone like Bjornfot, who I think has a little bit more upside than what we were expecting at this stage in free agency. We also get another trade offer here from the Calgary Flames, no thank you. And with that, we're now into August with free agency pretty much concluded. We'll take a look at the free agency pool, as I think most of the top guys did sign. Most notably, I think the Seattle Kraken did make a big splash signing Pavel Zacha and Joel Farabee. And we see here Claude Giroux is still on the open market as his demand has slipped by about $2 million. But it looks like the teams interested right now are Vancouver, Montreal, Nashville, Detroit, Ottawa, and San Jose. So really to close out this episode, we'll just sim ahead and see where Claude Giroux ends up, last year's NHL points leader, as he won most of the awards as well. We'll just sim along here a few days, and that should do the trick, as he now has some offers and should come to a decision. And we'll take a look here at the message center, and if we go down towards the bottom here of this screen, new deal has been reached by Claude Giroux in Nashville. Terms are 1 year at $7.795 million, pretty much a 1 year contract at $8 million, as Claude Giroux will be in Nashville next season. So at this point, like I said, free agency is pretty much concluded. We're now ready to jump into our preseason episode. But before that, we will get a look at our roster and see what we're going to be working with as we get a trade. There was actually Joel Farabee in that trade offer from the Seattle Kraken, which seems very redundant. A lot of times you see teams will sign a free agent to a big contract, and they'll put him on the trade block right after that. So this is a look at our roster. Now we're going to have Mark Scheifele, of course, probably our top center again, as he returns for his 5th season with our Hartford Whalers. Now, Leo Carlsson also is going to be thrusted into a bigger role. He'll probably see some playing time as the center on that top line as well. I do expect him to progress, and I expect Mark Scheifele to regress. So if that were to be the case, we would probably throw Carlsson on the top line. Thomas Novak, our biggest free agent signing of this cycle, and I think a very underrated player at that. We got him on a very team-friendly deal at 2 years at $4.5 million, and I think he's a guy who can work up and down all the lines on our team and even provide some impact at the wing, because we're actually a lot deeper at center than we were last season. Of course, Jack Roslovic comes back after a career year where he posted 53 points, and he really came on strong towards the end of the season. We have Cole Sillinger, who I'm not sold on making the opening day roster. He's someone I wouldn't even mind putting on the trade block, see if we can maybe recoup a draft pick for him. But all things considered, definitely a solid fourth line option at the center spot. So we're going to leave that up in the air. Francois Lefebvre, our first round pick from last year, looks like he's going to be ready for some NHL action at 79 overall last year, 115 points in his second season in the QMJHL, just 19 years old, and we're hoping that he can step up to the task and provide a good impact as a rookie. Also has a few superstar abilities already with Shock and Awe, Third Eye, All Alone, and Relentless. Riley Damiani, probably an AHL guy. I think he's been at the AHL level every season so far for our Poughkeepsie Panthers, as he's missed only 2 games in that entire span, and he led the team in points last year as we won the Calder Cup. And now going over to left wing, we have Andrew Mangiapane, our captain all 5 seasons of this expansion franchise, able to re-sign him on a 3-year contract. And like I said, we didn't make the biggest splash in free agency, but we were able to re-sign guys like Mark Scheifele, Andrew Mangiapane, Brock Besser, Ivan Provorov. So we kept our foundation in place, but I think we also made some improvements in some spots as well. Philip Zadina has been a very good player for us after selecting him in the expansion draft. He and Mangiapane really are only 2 survivors now from that expansion draft. We still have Jacob Perreault, but not sure what we're going to do with him. Probably going to be an AHL guy if we can't maybe include him in a trade. Gabriel Landeskog, now at 35 years old, his second season as a Whaler incoming after trading for him in the last offseason. And Tervo Teravainen, like I said, I really like the addition as a 3rd or 4th line guy to bring that skill, a lot of experience, and I think playing with someone like Lefebvre or maybe Andre Vorobiev, Frederick Leonard, one of our younger guys, I think that would bode really well for our bottom lines and their development as well. At right wing, we still have Brock Besser, now going to be in his 4th season as a Whaler, 22 goals and 60 points last season. He'll be joined by Mark Stone in a very surprising addition here. Did not expect that, but as I've been saying, I do like what he offers between that experience, the skill set. I think he'll be a very good addition for us as another 2-way forward, which we really needed this free agency, even though we also did add Thomas Novak as well. Jacob Perreault, as I said, I'm not sure if he's going to live it up on the Hartford Whalers roster next season, although he did have 28 games played during the regular season and started every game in the postseason as well. And now going over to defenseman Sami Maki, now up to 90 overall, 22 years old. Some are already calling him the best lockdown defender in the entire NHL, and we're hoping that he goes up to an X factor next season. 9 goals, 24 points in his 4th season with a plus 22, his highest mark since his rookie year. He's at 6'4", 218 pounds, the first overall pick from 2024, and he has a bunch of abilities as well. Ice pack, quick pick, no contest, yoink, and shrug it off. He'll be joined by Brandon Montour most of the season on that top pairing. Montour will be in his 3rd season now as a Hartford Whaler. We also were able to re-sign him. I omitted him when I listed off our re-signings a few moments ago, as he led our defenseman with 61 points, another double-digit goal season from him, and over 50 assists for the first time in 5 seasons. Our defense will be made up also by Ryan Graves, a lockdown type of guy at 6'5", 220. We also have Ivan Provorov, and even though they're both left-handed shots, we might have them on the second pairing a little bit. Jordan Spence will probably work him in with Ryan Graves, as Spence is that offensive defenseman, whereas Graves is that defensive defenseman, so we like how they complement each other. Tobias Bjornfoot, we're going to see if he can earn a spot. I mean, as I said when we signed him, I really like the upside, very low risk, and he was very productive for an upstart Los Angeles Kings team last season at just 27 years old, a former first-round pick, and I think he might be finding his form here at the NHL level. Going into the system, though, we're also going to have Benjamin Culp battle for a roster spot, our first-round pick from 2026, I believe the year before we selected Francois Lefebvre. So we're definitely getting more of an influx of youth now with our Whalers team. A lot of our drafted prospects are coming along and working up through the organization. Culp comes off a 77-point season, 64 assists and 13 goals there at Arizona State. Just tore it up for them. Heimo Salmi, our captain from last year's Calder Cup team. Definitely going to give him some run in the preseason, but probably an AHLer for us. And we'll go up to forwards here real quick and see if anyone has a chance of making the roster, which does include Andre Vorobiev. We missed out on adding a sniper there for our bottom line, so Vorobiev, someone who's going to get a lot of run in the preseason, and if he can showcase any of that ability where he scored 31 goals leading the team last season at the AHL level, he could find himself on our 4th line come opening night. But Frederick Leonard, another young guy at the right wing spot who's going to battle for a spot on the roster. 118 points over 2 seasons there at the AHL, but he did miss a handful of games over that span. And really after that, no other prospects that have a chance at making the NHL team. And of course, at goaltender, we have Yaroslav Askarov, now going to be his second full season as the starter, or make it his third full season, actually. We acquired him back in year 3 at the trade deadline. Year 4, he was the starter for the first time. Then last season was his second season as a starter, although the numbers definitely dipped a little bit. The save percentage down, the goals against down, but he was dealing with a nagging injury most of the way. And another young guy here from one of our draft classes, Javon Marks. He was absurd last year at the AHL level, 44, 20, and 4 with 5 shutouts, a 916 save percentage, 224 goals against, and he kept up that play in the postseason en route to a Calder Cup trophy. So he's going to be the man backing up Askarov next year. If he plays well, we might even throw him in there more than expected. I think Askarov has 2 more years left on his contract, and in the meantime, we are going to groom Javon Marks to be the guy. But this is where I'm going to leave you, folks. Thank you so much for watching. I definitely think it was a productive offseason. Let me know what you think in the comments. What would you have done differently? Any free agents you would have targeted that I maybe overlooked or I just didn't really delve into all that much? But I invite you to come back for year 6. It might be the final season of this Hartford Whalers expansion franchise. The first series we got going up on the YouTube channel here on JVids Gaming, but we're going to try and get through year 6 very fast and maybe shift our focus after that. We want to get a college football dynasty going on the channel. We're going to get a new Madden expansion franchise going as well in the coming months, so we might call it quits on this Hartford Whalers expansion franchise. So come back for year 6, the conclusion more than likely, and see if we can close out this series with a Stanley Cup ring. But as always, everybody, it's been real and be well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.